All right, little ones are dismissed, big ones have to stay. So, for those who show up in a church and realize you're on a train and you're not sure which car you're on, and sometimes you're not even sure which direction it's going, but it's difficult for the conductor to go through it every time and restart and restate. So I'm simply going to say that we are in the second half of the tribulation in Revelation chapter 17. We were introduced to the 7 bowls in chapter 16, and now that's being unpacked for us in chapter 17 and chapter 18, and we'll have even more details in chapter 19. So as you can see, trying to get everybody up to speed when you're talking about whole chapters, and for everybody who has experienced my teaching, you know that we don't do whole chapters ever. So we're going through slowly, and there's some things I will go back over today, simply because we are in verse 6, the second part, where it states, "And when I saw her, I wondered with a great wonder." So that connects us, of course, with what we've already been through in verses 1 through 6a. And where we're at is the uncovering of Babylon the Great. We've been introduced to Babylon the Great back a few chapters when an angel comes in and says, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." Well, we're not going to go back that far. I do want to go back to chapter 17, verse 1, however, and read through to bring us up to where we are today. "And one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me." So, for those who have been here, the 7 angels are a group that is connected again and again with that very phrase. They are 7 angels, and they're the 7 angels of the 7 bowls. The 7 bowls have followed the 7 trumpets, which followed the 7 seals. So we are at the end. And now we have these 7 angels, and in this specific instance, verse 1, one of them is designated to uncover and reveal things on Jesus' behalf, of course, ultimately for our behalf, but so that John can share with us the things that he gets to see. So the angel says, "Come here. I will show you the justice, the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters." The great harlot we will find out more about as we go through these 2 chapters, and she's very specific. It's interesting that God uses that horrendous word, harlot, which in various translations is translated with different words. And I got to thinking about my quote-unquote favorite is this one, because not too many people use harlot. Kind of in a sense, the only time I hear it is in relation to the scriptures, where I hear the other ones in relation to anything. But it's an ugly word, because it's an ugly thing. And God has described the heart of humankind's choices with regards to God's designs in this world. God has designs for us in this world. And it excites me to see all of you husbands and wives sitting together, because that is one of God's basic designs in this world. And he didn't make Eve for no purpose at all. And Adam got excited, as he should have, and life went on from there. And today we are the recipients of that as being one of God's plans. Isn't it interesting that the one way, I can't know if it's the one way, but one of the ways that God chooses to reveal man's heart is with the term harlotry. And so this great harlot sits on many waters, which if your eyes go down to verse 15, it says, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So she sits upon the world and the world system, with whom the kings of the earth committed acts of immorality, and those who dwell on the earth were made drunk with the wine of her immorality. A couple of other pictures. God didn't make wine for us to get drunk on. And yet any excess on our part leads to something. And so the immorality, it's not just that somebody stole a paper clip and now they're immoral, although that would be a true statement, but that they're not going to stop with the paper clip. And once they get to a zenith on the sin, they're not going to stop there either. It's going to expand, and that's why this expression, made drunk with the wine of her immorality, is so poignant. Now, verse 3, something that we have not, I mention, of course, because it's right there. He carried me away in spirit into a deserted place. It's been a long time since we've talked about that. So, believe it or not, we're going back to chapter 1. No, please, don't do that. We're going back to chapter 1, verse 10. The very first chapter, and John is being prepared to do something which is unusual. And so in verse 10 of chapter 1 of Revelation, John says, I was in spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a loud voice like a sound of a trumpet. Well, what's going on here? And you'll notice that I said in spirit. Almost all of the translations translate it as in the Spirit and give it a capital S. There is no definite article in the Greek, so it doesn't say in the Spirit. We assume that. And the word spirit in the Greek is a word that can mean breath, wind. It can mean spirit as in not physical. It can mean a spirit, as in what we would call a ghost. And it can mean, of course, especially and very clearly, when the word holy is attached to it, it is referring to the Holy Spirit, non-physical entity known as the third person of the Godhead. So I translate this in connection with what it says in the Greek, in spirit. So in other words, this isn't a physical thing for John. John is not getting in his chariot and driving off to downtown Patmos and getting out and walking into the 7-Eleven. That's not what's happening. He's right where he is, but now there's a spiritual thing happening to him which doesn't entail his physical being. And what happens in chapter 1, verse 10 is it prepares him for what you and I get to know about ourselves in chapters 2 and 3, the 7 churches. And I'm not going to go back and say anything more than that, but that's what Jesus prepares him for. We move on to chapter 4 of Revelation. Chapter 4 and verse 2. Immediately I was in spirit, and behold, a throne was standing in heaven, and one sitting on the throne, and on it goes. Because chapters 4 and 5 bring us into the very center of heaven, that is the throne room of heaven, and we get to see that which we would not typically see ever, get to see, able to see in any other way. But John, in spirit, not physical, so again, he's not here and all of a sudden, he's off wherever heaven is. No, he's there in connection with spirit. So the first one, God uses in spirit with John to move him into a position to hear something that's going to be a message for God's church for 2,000 years, because that's how long the church has existed. The second one, God brings him in spirit in order to allow him to enter into heaven and see the scene of heaven that God wants to reveal. Now, for the third time, chapter 17, verse 3, and he carried me away. So this is a little different. He carried me away in spirit, that's the same, into a place, a deserted place. And I've contemplated this and contemplated this. I can't necessarily come up with an excellent answer, but God wanted John to be in the place, and I don't want to say no distractions, because this wilderness or this deserted place is exactly that. There's nothing there. You're probably not going to find even a Snickers wrapper there. So he carried me away in spirit into a deserted place. So now God has once more, and now we're in, and this is why it's so important, because now we're in the final stage of seeing God's final sliver of his final portion of his plan. And we want to say that the final portion of the plan is heaven. Well, of course, that's the conclusion, but before we even get to the reign of Christ, which then would be the 1,000 years, we've got a conclusion of God's judgment upon the earth. And that is what we're looking at. The final stages, the final throes, the death pangs, if you will, of man's efforts to rule his world to the glory of man. All hail man. And God says, no, I've got a different plan for that. So he takes him, he carries him away in spirit into a deserted place, and then we have this: I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast full of blasphemous names, having 7 heads and 10 horns. We actually came across that for the first time back in chapter 13, verse 1, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads, and on his horns were 10 diadems, and on his heads were blasphemous names. And these are things too, and we're not going to go back there, that we were introduced to back in Daniel chapter 7. So this is all culminating. Everything that Daniel saw roughly 3,000 years ago, and John saw 2,000 years ago. John is seeing and sharing on our behalf, so that we can see what's going on. Woman with clothes this way, abominations. She was having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations and the unclean things of her immorality. And there's a lot of thoughts that just come flashing by when you read these things. And she has all the trappings of wealth and power and prestige, but not in the same sense as, for example, in a presidential race, there's power and prestige there. But certain people that would walk in and they'd flash their pearls, and they'd flash their Gucci's, and after that I can't name anything else. So, but they flash all this stuff, but what she's holding in her hand, she has to hold purposefully. It's her abominations and the unclean things of her heart commitment. And they're all ugly. In verse 5, upon her forehead, and that could be either the marking as in the 666, or, sorry, transitioning here. If Kathy had her way, I wouldn't have shown up today, but you see now what she's got to work with. Stubborn pastor who says, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to do this. So, but my legs are running out of steam. Hopefully I don't have to go any lower.
Can you read on your back?
Let's hope we don't have to go there. So, mystery. Remember, mystery in the scripture isn't Ellery Queen. It is that which would remain unknown except for the fact that it is revealed. So, this is now being revealed to us for the first time. Babylon the Great, got it. The mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. You know, all of us want to leave a legacy. I mean, of some sort. Whatever that might be. This is not the legacy I personally would want to leave. Mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. I mean, there's no getting around. That's awful. And there's just, it reeks of judgment. So nothing about it is good. And then the final things, I saw her drunk with the blood of the holy ones, God's people, and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. Those are the testifiers of Jesus. And as a parting shot across our bow, there's times in the book of the Revelation you wonder if there's any devotional thought at all. And there are, because there's some doxologies in here. So there are some good things there. But the challenge to say a testifier of Jesus, is that who I am? If you are going to identify someone and there was a whole list of options, would this be one of the options that would be given in which the answer would be yes? And so she is excited, the world system is excited about hating believers, despising believers, not really too concerned. In some of these foreign countries in which Christians are killed, if it wasn't for certain specific groups watching out and giving us the numbers and the reports, we would never know that Christians were killed. Because no one cares. They're just Christians. Gee, get a life. But to be named a testifier of Jesus, a witness of Jesus, to me it's a challenge that it's like, is that what I am? Is that who I am? Or am I some sort of pretender? So we get to today's sermon. Am I ever going to get through Revelation? And I saw her and I wondered greatly. Okay. Page 1 done. Done. There we go. All right. And when I saw her, I wondered with a great wonder. Now, very few times, and I used to, in my early days at Parkhill, I would rag on certain translations. I don't do that anymore. But if I disagree with a translation, I will let you know. And the King James is a perfectly fine translation. But in this instance, if you look on the notes, and when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. No, I did not wonder with great admiration. I did not. The problem is that that same word, thaumazo, I'm amazed, I'm astonished, can also be translated as admiration, but it would be an inappropriate place when we get down to verse 8, where the people, you can see it at G, and they were filled with wonder, those dwelling upon the earth. They were filled with admiration. That's in essence what that would be translated appropriately at, but not here. So it's literally, I wondered on seeing her with a great wonder. Now, the only funny thing about that statement is we don't know what John was really wondering about. What was he wondering about? Her name on her forehead, imprinted there, or with a one of these sweatbands that advertise, "I am the great whore." Was it that? Well, that's what it says. And by the way, that historically in Rome, many of the prostitutes would do that. "Hi, I'm Zelda, the whatever." So, not unusual. John would have understood what it was. We, thankfully, are a little bit removed from that. But nevertheless, what was he wondering at? We don't exactly really know. But the angel in verse 7 corrects him and says, why are you amazed? Why are you astonished? What do you think you're looking at? So here's the thing. I myself will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the wild beast, the one carrying her, and having the 7 heads and the 10 horns. So the angel is going to give him the information about her. And she is sitting, right? She is sitting, the wild beast is carrying her. Sitting on her part implies that he is supplying her with a lot of things, including her motive, her force, her purpose. So the angel is going to explain which end is up. What's going on? Who is this person? The 7 heads and the 10 horns, by the way, we've had that discussion back in whatever I just said, chapter 13. So we've had that discussion, but I listened to that. You can listen to it on YouTube. It's the one just before Easter. It's on Palm Sunday, and I remember saying to you, because I just listened to myself, saying, "That's okay. If you don't understand it all, it's fine, because I don't understand it all." But basically 7 heads or 7 empires usually, where the 7 heads are usually the empires, but sometimes they refer to the leader of the empire, and that's just the way it is. The 10 horns are 10 leaders of that, so how they all fit together, they do, not all at once, but they do. So let's move on to verse 8. I'm going to read it. The wild beast, the beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss and go to destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose name has not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will wonder when they see the beast that he was and is not and will come. So, not that you're going to comprehend all of that all at once, but basically verse 8 is prophetic. So everything he's looking at is coming. In relation to the beast that he saw was is the same word that we've seen in relation to God. God was. So how is the beast different than God? God was, the beast was. Well, it's the same difference between you and God. You was, I mean, you're whatever age you are now, name it, but you was 2, and you was 1, and you was screaming fresh out of the womb. So you was back there somewhere. The beast was back there at the point in which he began to exist. So how is that different than God? Well, the difference is night and day. Because God was. You just point in that direction and there is no end. God always existed. He is the great I am. At every moment that you breathe or have breathed or anybody's ever breathed and before the worlds were, he was. Always in that direction. So God was eternal. And this one, and there will be a point in all of that in just a moment. So he was. The thing is, he is not. And you say, okay, I'm very confused. I was confused, now I'm confused on a higher level. How can he be was, and now he is not? Well, something that we don't want to forget is back in chapter 13, verse 2. In chapter 13, verse 2. And the beast which I saw, wrong verse. Come on, Wayne, you got to find it. There we go. Verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain, and his fatal wound was healed. And the whole earth was amazed and followed after the beast. So, this is a prophetic statement. So it's a statement made to John 2,000 years ago, but it's a prophetic statement on something that's in the future. All of that is always a little bit mind-boggling. But the beast that he saw was, so he existed at some point, and is not because what? He's dead. We already saw that back in chapter 13. I think there's 3 mentions. He's fatally wounded, and then the fatal wound was healed, and I think it's called the wound of the sword, which killed him. He was brought back to life. Anyway, 3 times. And so this is that moment in time in which he's dead. Okay, well that's crazy. So the beast which you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of the abyss. Now this is crazy stuff, because when we die, nobody gets a second chance, no matter which good movies you like and who your favorite actor is and how they come back and their whole world has changed. No, nobody gets to come back. So we die, and Paul taught us in Philippians to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So we've got that. But all the way up through this, the dead go to the place of the dead. And when I say dead, I mean the spiritually dead. So they're all in a place of the dead. Now the abyss, we have discovered over time, is hell. It's another word for bottomless. So it's bottomless. At the bottom of everything is hell. So that's what the abyss is. So this guy dies, and when he comes back, we have something very, very strange, because he's coming from hell. So you kind of go, well, okay, I'm not really sure what to do with that. What does that exactly mean? It probably, I'm going to say, probably means that he is, oh, don't use that word, zombie. He's not a zombie. But I believe that he's not himself. I believe that he is possessed of hell. either demon-possessed or satanically possessed, so that Satan doesn't even have to be his old nasty awful dragon self. He can now be this resurrected political guru of the world. And so now he has a new quote-unquote spiritual backbone, which would be the worst possible scenario. Is that what it is? I don't know. Is it probably what it is? In my estimation, this man is no longer what you would call 100% human. That's my thought. So he comes up from the abyss, and this next statement makes me do what I just did. And he's about to come up out of the abyss and going to perdition or destruction or hell. It's not the word for hell, it's the word for destruction or perdition, but in essence that's what we're talking about. So we all remember and understand, and it's the core of our belief, so hopefully I can say 100% of you agree and believe that Jesus died. Jesus died. He was so dead that they buried him. And he stayed in the grave all day Saturday, and then at the crack of dawn, literally that's how Luke says it, he rose from the dead. So Jesus rose from the dead. Who was he? He was Jesus. Was he Jesus 100%? Oh yeah. He was Jesus 100%. So Jesus rose from the dead. And where did he go? Well, he stayed on earth for 40 days, and he ascended into heaven, and he's interceding for you today. And he's preparing a place for you today. And one of these days, you and I are going to hear a shout, and everything's going to change. This guy shows up from the dead, and then he gets to, sorry, but it reminds me of a spiritual whack-a-mole. Here I am, whack, bye-bye. Because it's only 3.5 years. He gets to exist as the spiritual whack-a-mole, and I say that as disrespectfully as I can, for 3.5 years. And that's it. You want to find out where this ends? Chapter 19. Come on, Wayne. You knew it yesterday. Saw an angel, laid hold of the dragon, threw him into the abyss, shut it, 1,000 years. Okay, that's why, because it's chapter 19, verse 20. And the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet who performed the signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. These two were thrown alive into the lake of fire, which burns with brimstone. They don't get any reprieve. They go straight to hell. They don't go past go. They don't collect anything. And that's why this pithy little statement in verse 8, he is not, he comes up from the abyss, and then he goes to death. That's what all that is. It's a quick in and out. Of course, 3.5 years on earth with him as the king would be bad, but nevertheless, in the scheme of things of life, 3.5 years is nothing. So, this is where then it says, and they shall be in admiration. They shall admire. They shall wonder, those dwelling on the earth. Those are called earth dwellers. It's the phrase that John uses again and again and again in Revelation, referring to those on the earth, not that just live on the earth, but those who live on the earth and choose him. I would say choose me first, but the way I choose me first is to choose him first. So those are the earth dwellers. They're not the ones that choose him first. So That's what that is. And they shall admire, or be admiring, the ones dwelling on the earth, those whose names have not been written in the book of life from the world's foundation. That is one of the saddest statements that can be made. The question is your name written in the Lamb's Book of Life? If you have acknowledged Jesus Christ as your only means of salvation, then the answer is yes. Your name will never be removed from the Lamb's Book of Life. He's promised that. In God's mind, there is no time. So when your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, it's not like it was written in on Tuesday and by Tuesday night you'd already thought a bad thought. So, too bad for you. Oh, okay, he accepted me again Wednesday morning, so we're good. All right. Oh, Wednesday noon, already he's kicking the dog. It doesn't work that way, my friends. Salvation isn't based upon you. It's based upon Him and His grace. So when your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life, it's been written in permanently. And these people's names were never written in from the foundation of the world. There's humans all around us that are just walking dust. It's all we are anyway. All of us are just dust. But all of them are just walking dust. There's no life. But these people admire, these people who dwell on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will admire, will wonder when they see the beast. I thought he was dead, but there he is. That he was and is not and will come. Do you realize if you do this and just stop and meditate, we're not going to do that, but if you go back to chapter 1 of Revelation and read about God revealing Himself as the God who was and who is and is to come. This guy was, he isn't, and then when he shows up for a dress rehearsal and it doesn't even make it to the real deal. He gets whacked right into the abyss. So this whole beast thing is a horrendous conclusion, and obviously we're only done with this portion, but it's a horrendous conclusion to a parody of who God is. The eternal God, the one who was and is to come. This guy was for a period of time and is not, and then when he comes back, it's only temporary. It's a total opposite of what God is. All right, I'm out of steam. Probably been out of steam for 20 minutes, but anyway, to the glory of God, next week, theoretically, with some strength, we'll get through the next portion. And I have to close with that. Joel, I'm going to ask you to close my sermon off with prayer. Go ahead.
Heavenly Father, thank you for your word that you've given us. And thank you for your assurances of salvation. Help us always to focus on you and giving your word out to